In today's world, we are increasingly dependent on technology. Our business and personal lives rely on it, but as you've probably noticed, it's unreliable. Our computers are slow, so we end up squinting at smartphones and tablets. The jokers we pay to fix our stuff have no clue what they're doing. We live in constant fear that something's going to happen to our personal data. So we're scared into paying for fake protection that proves useless when disaster strikes. Update attacks, fake Wi-Fi, cloud control, intelligent, successful people feel intimidated by the chaos and think it's somehow their fault. If they only knew what the industry was doing to them, they'd get torches and pitchforks. If only we had someone to explain it all in plain English so we can start protecting ourselves. Oh wait, we do! It's the Computer Exorcist Podcast with your host, Mark Anthony Arena.
From the Wallace Memorial microphone in my home office, overlooking the can of worms in downtown Rochester, New York. This is the Computer Exorcist Podcast. My name is Mark Anthony Arena. I am so glad you have joined us here today. I have a returning special guest who hasn't been on the show since the old bonus show. So it's a long time coming that you're back on the show. My college buddy and fraternity brother, James Coffin. How are you?
I'm doing well. Taking the day off right now.
Good. I'm so glad you're here to do these articles with me because sometimes I fatigue of doing them alone. And I'm glad to have someone laughing along here because this stuff is, as you well know, this stuff is all preposterous.
Very Orwellian.
Oh, thank you. Exactly. So really quick, I want to explain who you are. So James, I've known him since probably 2001 or so, and he's been state government in an IT capacity for at least 12 years. But what you were telling me is that even before you were officially an IT professional in the government, you were, tell me how that worked, you were a normal government official, but people came to you and they're like, hey, you're a young person, can you help me with my keyboard and mouse?
Yep, that was pretty much how it went. My keyboard's broken, can you replace it? I don't know how to make this spreadsheet in Lotus Approach. Can you do it? Or in other cases, trying to get me to write VB script in Excel spreadsheets. And I'm like, what? Don't think that's going to work too well. Because on the next update, the VB script is going to go away.
Oh, the next week's version of Excel was going to deprecate it? It was going to drop VB?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And it's always a surprise attack, right? It's just surprise attack. All of a sudden, this product that you're using, and by the way, the product that we force attack you to purchase no longer supports what you're trying to do, correct?
And this is back in the dark ages when we were still using WordPerfect. They were trying to write VB script paragraphs to make letters to the taxpayers.
All right, and look, that's a perfectly legitimate need, right?
Right.
Think about it. When any of you out there get a letter from your government that says, "Dear person," and we're going to talk about this in a few minutes in an article, but it's not "Dear taxpayer" or "Dear citizen." It says "Dear Mark" or "Dear James," right?
Right.
Perfectly legitimate need that your organization, your government needed to do. So Microsoft decided, sorry, too bad, we're just going to chop it off. Surprise attack, no notice, right?
Right. Wow. And now we have to make them in, quote, templates in everything, from Outlook to Word, and it's just cumbersome because now it's all templates. You got to make sure that you have the right language in every template, and now you got to go through this whole long list of templates and make sure you choose the right one.
So it used to be a lot easier.
Yeah, it's getting easier, but it's just more cumbersome now.
So it was easier, then it exploded, and it was an explosion of ultra complication, and now they're trying to work toward making it less bad.
less bad, right?
Why don't they just stop picking at the scab? Why do they, right?
Because everybody has this idea that AI is going to make all this great.
Right, it's a
I
magic
ha-
wand. It's a salve, right? And it's going to somehow
and
magically make things better. Is
it's
that what they're?
better. And I haven't seen any artificial intelligence that's intelligent because we don't even
I
because
love it.
we don't even know what human intelligence is yet.
And
We
that
know,
is dwindling, huh?
and there's like eight, according to my psychology classes, there's 8 human intelligences. So how can we make one machine intelligence? It's impossible to do. If you
That's a
have eight,
really good point.
if there's 8 different human intelligences,
Yeah,
I'm waiting for somebody to wake up and understand that.
that's a
And
really good point.
all the salespeople I've talked to over the years basically will tell you people are kidding themselves because most of the people who build these models don't even know what's in the model.
Wow.
So
And
if
they're
you ask,
just, yeah.
they're just throwing it all together,
Wow.
and they're so all over the place. You can't even make a model that makes sense without it blowing up on you.
And they're just empty-headed sales bros and sales huns who are
Mm-hmm.
promising a panacea to the world when in reality
There is
AI
no
is going
panacea.
to. Oh, I was
There
gonna say it's
is no
also gonna
panacea
make everything more complex, but yeah, yeah.
because what's the problem with artificial intelligence in America?
Hmm.
Comes right down to one factor:
The people
the
using it.
ink. Nope, the English language.
English is quite difficult, right? I mean, that's why I
Not
love Spanish because it's
okay.
so consistent. Uh huh.
The English language grammatically is one of the hardest things to figure out.
Oh, when I
And
do voice texting on my phone, it always gets everything wrong. This week's version gets everything wrong. It used to be a lot better, but now it's horribly anti-improved. And yeah, whenever I
but
say anything, it gets everything wrong.
but think about the words we have created in the last 20 years in just the tech industry.
Great point. Great point. A
The
huge
Ameri-
plethora of new vocabulary.
right, and the English language is the most expandable language of all languages in the world.
Wow.
Chinese, Arabic, French, Spanish, they're fixed languages. There is
Uh-huh.
no real expandability in any of those languages. So you can make those easily convertible to artificial intelligence because you don't have to worry about adding new words because there are no new words
Oh, that's really
to
well.
add.
For example, I think it's cool that in Chinese, the word
Yes,
for computer is electric brain. It's just two words that they
right,
block together like Legos. Isn't that cool?
exactly. Because it's a closed language.
That's really
They can't
interesting.
make a new word for it.
Whereas we're over here slapping portmanteaus together and chopping things, and I'll think of some good examples in a second. But it's
Think
yeah.
of the words we have for computer. We have computer, desktop, laptop,
Hmm.
mobile device, cell phone, all words interchangeable for the same thing.
Yeah, equipment. I always say machine, and then
Equipment,
people go, "What machine?
right?
What are you talking about?" Uh huh.
Equipment. Some people call a desktop a hard drive when it's really not a hard drive.
Everyone calls it a hard drive, and
Right,
everyone also calls thumb drives zip drives, even though that
right,
was a blip. It was available for a year, 25 years ago, and everyone calls them
right.
zip drives now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or people call their tower their modem most of the time.
Modem, right. It's in that thing. It's in that thing over there.
It's in the
And
thing, and
we
that's why I just say machine. But yeah, in their defense, these words are thrown out there willy nilly, and their computer guys never, ever bothered to explain anything to them.
and if you throw these words into some artificial intelligence database, whatever you want to call it, what it is, they're going to say, come pick up my equipment or come pick up my monitor slash screen. It's not going to know what the screen is. It's going to think the screen might be the window or the screen might be the screen on the window. It has no reference for a computer screen.
And again, especially if you have a user who mistakes all the terms, plug it into a computer that doesn't understand the terms.
It's going to get worse.
Right, because people say, I got a screen. What do you mean you got a screen? And they actually mean I got a window on my screen that says a message. Or they'll think the whole computer is built into the monitor when it is or when it isn't. Yeah.
This is why I say, like, the internet has the intelligence of a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence has the brain and the maturity of a 3-year-old.
But that being said, yeah, I mean, and again,
because they can't express themselves.
But James, you know what? I would rather have it this way. No, versus an omniscient machine that controls us all.
Right. But the whole omnipresent, omnipotent machine is decades away.
Luckily for everyone.
People need to get away from this idea that artificial intelligence is coming in the next 5 months. It's not. There's no way.
That's a great point, because a lot of, again, sales bros are promising people that AI is already omniscient, right?
It's not. Look at its intelligence.
Yeah, and make sure you tune in to last week's episode where we talk about how AI or specific chunks of AI are already controlling us through feed algorithms.
Yeah.
We got to get through all this stuff. You ready? We'll probably maybe make this a 2-parter. Okay.
We probably will end up making it a 2-parter, as usual.
So this is an email I got from a client named Madeline. And she got a scam email, and she forwarded it to me to ask me what's going on here. And it goes like this. From Technical Support. And they spelled it TECNICAL. Okay?
That's the first giveaway that it's a scam.
Thank you, exactly. And they just figure whatever, people won't notice. You know, they didn't notice, the people don't notice, no one notices. And is it from PayPal.com or Apple.com? No, it's from GuptaBhuminji@gmail.com.
That's another dead giveaway.
Thank you. So instead of saying Dear Madeline, it says Dear Subscriber, and then the email address.
That's another dead giveaway.
Another dead giveaway. They don't have the technology that you have at your government office where they can insert the person's real name, because that's more personal and that's more accurate and real. Please be advised that you have opted for the auto renewal option for our iMusic application. So,
yeah, the question is you've got to ask yourself right away, I've never done that. I'm not. Why would I do this?
Absolutely,
why
but
am I
as
getting this email?
Absolutely, you got to question it, but unfortunately, again, I say this all the time, it's the industry's fault, because we're all getting constant pop-ups 24 hours a day from real Apple and real Microsoft and real Dropbox and whoever else attacking and begging us for $1, and we have no idea why. So they just figure they'll fit in with the crowd. Now, here's something interesting. There's no such thing as iMusic. Right? It sounds like something that Apple would come out with, but it's called Apple Music, the real thing, and it's a subscription. It's not an iMusic application. You don't subscribe to an application. So, but they're taking advantage of the fact, again, it's the industry's fault. Because every 12 minutes, Microsoft and Apple change their product names. All right, if you're in an ultra-complex industry, would you exacerbate it by changing your product names every year?
Of course.
Right, and it's absolute zero logic, right?
It's also the fault of the industry for outsourcing their programming.
Good point. They're outsourcing it to some dude. I don't care where the dude is, but he's working on a project for 10 weeks or something, and then he's gone forever. And then another dude has to pick up that and spruce it up, right?
And then there's always a gap where one picks up and the other leaves off.
Yeah.
And they wonder why.
Yeah, great point. App, iMusic, parentheses, iTunes, Apple. Okay, so now they're playing to the familiarity, because last week it was called iTunes. From 2001 until last week it was called iTunes, and this week Apple changed it to Apple Music. And then it says
Yeah, they're just throwing all the buzzwords in there.
Yeah, exactly. They're like making a soup, like I do with my rice cooker. I pour random ingredients in there. Content provider Apple Inc. Amount $179.99. Payment method by card. That doesn't make sense. iMusic app auto renew fee $179.99. Right, they're rubbing it in that there's a large amount, and then it says your subscription will renew at $179.99 unless you cancel it by Wednesday. Now, as you know, Apple hates people with a passion, and they will never talk to people. Well, the industry hates us all. Apple actually does have a phone number. They're one of the few. But anyway, these scammers put, to cancel your subscription, kindly connect to our customer care on 1-854 blah, blah, blah. And 854 is not a toll-free number, by the way, but it sounds like one.
Nope.
And then the sentence after, okay, says if you have any further queries or improvement suggestions, hysterical, directly reach out to our support team at 1-854. Again, the sentence right after that, they're rubbing that phone number in there. So they get you scared, they rub the phone number in there, and then it says Apple software in USA are provided by Apple Payment Private Limited, which isn't true.
Which means they must have hacked into Apple's system to get some of that.
No, not at all. It's just a scary phone number.
That's true. But
It's just a scary phone number, and they change the phone number every day, so you call them up, and so they're hoping to do like a drive-by, right, where they get a bunch of people before their number is shut down.
and you don't know if that number has been spoofed either.
In this case, it's a real number. A spoof means that they're doing an outgoing call and they're impersonating someone else during a call to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a real number because you have to call them, so they have to be there to receive the call. That's a great question.
I mean, it's just my criminal mind going, how many different ways can this go?
Right, absolutely. and that's the thing, you and I have to have these active minds to put out so many fires and play whack-a-mole, mainly with the industry.
Oh, God, yeah.
But especially with these scams where we have to scan everything, we're always on edge, right? Because we're like, all right, let's look at the possible threats.
Yeah.
All right, ready for the next one?
Mm-hmm.
All right. This one's from MacGyver Tech, thanks to him, and 2021 August. Western Digital caught bait and switching customers with slow SSDs. And this is from extremetech.com. Did you hear about this one?
No, I didn't. But I hate solid state drives.
Really? Why?
I hate them with a passion. Because most of the time they fail. At least the first ones.
The earlier ones, yeah. I've had good luck, and it certainly depends on the brand. I'm a fan of Kingston. I love them the most.
The early ones that are no bigger than a USB drive, they were the garbage of the garbage.
Are you talking about the gum stick size?
Yes.
Good to know.
They were the worst.
And I'm okay with the industry coming out with something and then working out the kinks. You know, most industries, that's fine. I mean, that's a normal physical innovation. So it's one of the few things I applaud that this industry does is SD cards, SSD hard drives, gum sticks. And I get it, there's going to be a little teething time. But usually this industry makes everything worse every day.
But those original SSD drives that were the size of a stick of gum, when they were in laptops, and we all know how people treat laptops.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't last. They just simply didn't last.
That's really interesting. And yeah, folks, here's something that is the user's fault, and here's something you can control, is please treat your laptop delicately and gingerly, and don't grab it by the screen and then crush the screen, and don't walk around with your power cord sticking out because it'll snap off.
And God forbid, don't put tape over your camera. It's not watching you.
Well, if you do want to cover it, get the plastic flap. So it's,
For which I have thousands of them.
Oh, cool. I'll take a couple.
I got thousands of those things from trade shows over the years.
Cool. So it used to be that people were given coffee mugs and then people were given thumb drives. Now they're giving camera flaps?
Yes. I used to take them to work and just here, people, instead of tape, use this. I used to put one in every laptop bag.
Yeah, because it's more civilized, right? Instead of having a chunk of duct tape.
No kidding.
All right. So here goes the article. The Western Digital SN550 Blue, which is currently one of the best reviewed SSDs on the market, has undergone a NAND lobotomy. While the new SSD performs on par with the old drive that Western Digital actually sampled for the review, performance craters from 610 down to 390 megabytes per second. That's just a unit of measurement. So the performance drops off. The new drive offers just 64% of the performance of the old drive, in plain English. This is unacceptable. It is unethical for any company to sample, and that's the author's words. It's unethical for any company to sample and launch a product to strong reviews, only to turn around and sell an inferior version at a later date without changing the model number or the SKU, or telling customers that they're buying garbage. His words, not mine.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with selling a slower one at a good price, right? I love cheap and cheerful budget stuff. And there's nothing wrong about using the goodwill of the reviewers and enthusiasts to kick your other bad hardware out the door. But this is bait and switch. And the author actually mentions a prior thing where Crucial did a bait and switch. So
yeah.
I believe this was due to the chip shortage at the time, but it's still unacceptable. Yeah, look, it was undoubtedly caused by the chip shortage, where these companies were scrambling and they're like, "Oh, I can't get my hands on a certain chip," right? Because they're just buying chips. They're buying boxes of chips to assemble these things, right?
Right.
So they just figure, "Oh, I can't find a chip. I don't know. Let's just use this one. It'll be fine." But they didn't call it a different product, right? So it's kind of like if we bought a Corvette and they ran out of V8 engines, did they go, "Well, let's just shove a Chevy Cruze 4-cylinder in here and hope nobody notices"?
Right. That's exactly the way it is. And then you wonder why you got all these hard drives crashing.
yeah, they're using cheapy chips. And again, they were so well reviewed, right? Imagine Corvette gets great reviews, 0 to 60 times, it's very fast, and then you buy it and it's got a 4-cylinder?
It's like buying 100 megabit speed internet and you're only getting 75.
Great point, right? And usually, and I talk about this all the time in all the talks that I've been giving in Massachusetts, is that it's usually, you're probably getting the 100 at the modem, but then you have a fake router.
Yeah, it's what you got for a router in between.
We got a couple more here. You're an economist, right?
That was my minor.
All right, cool. So you're going to love this one. This article comes from listener Matt. And again, we're behind here. We're getting there. We're getting to the end of 2021. This is October 2021. We're getting there. And you're helping me a lot get through these. Author is Sebastian Blanco. And it says, Bay Area Grant Program offers $9,500 to trade in your gasoline car for an EV.
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah.
Yep.
California program is a cash for internal combustion clunkers deal for people in lower income brackets. And actually what they're doing, you'll see in a second, they're doing what I call squeezing the water balloon.
Yep.
You ever squeeze the water balloon and what happens? Does the water disappear?
Pops.
No, it moves. It moves, right? And then the little image here is nice. They have a picture of an old Nissan pickup, and then they have a Mercury Grand Marquis, and they're in a dumpster.
Yeah,
that's a cool illustration. So here's 2 comments on the article. I'm just going to read those. One commenter says, "Ugh, modeling this program after Cash for Clunkers, especially right now when cars are so scarce, is totally idiotic. Cash for Clunkers the original program permanently destroyed 690,000 vehicles from the resale market. Pundits talked about how that was a good thing because it would boost the economy by creating jobs to make newer and better cars," which are actually worse. Newer is always worse. But not only is the program expenditure itself dubious, right? By taking taxpayer money and spending it on expensive new cars rather than other priorities, right? Like our degrading roads and everything else.
And housing.
And so many other things, and all the extreme deficits they have deficits because they have no mental self-control and come up with stuff that their minds are like fountains of idiotic ideas.
No kidding.
So taking taxpayer money and spending on expensive new cars rather than other priorities, but it's worse because it destroyed something of value and rendered it valueless to the resale market, just like the Apple death grip scandal. All right, if you buy an Apple phone, and now unfortunately Apple computers, it is locked permanently to your email address. So unless you jump through a lot of hoops, you are never allowed to resell it.
Okay, here's your problem though.
Mm-hmm.
When you're offering only $9,500 for a internal combustion car, what if my car is still worth $12,000? I'm taking a loss.
Great point. Great. And maybe it's a bonus. You know, maybe if you trade it in, you get full value plus that.
I doubt it. Because there's only, in those grant programs, there's only a certain block of money to go around.
Sure, but maybe if I traded in the dealer, then the dealer would have to give me $12,000 plus the government would give me that money. So the dealer would have to give up the car. No, you're right. It would have to be up to $9,500, huh? Because otherwise you're just giving the thing away.
Right. So you're on the losing end. But they're assuming on the other side that the federal tax break at that point in time of you buying an electric vehicle of $3,000 was going to make up for the other, say, $3,000 of the $12,000 car. See?
Yeah, you're gonna. Yeah, otherwise you're just eating the $3,000, right? You're getting $9,000 for something you should have gotten $12,000 for, and on top of it, remember with Cash for Clunkers, all those cars had to be completely destroyed. They couldn't part them out. So now you've got a lack of parts on the market. So now other people have to put their car in the garbage because they can't find parts.
Now, not only that, what are you going to do with all those metals?
Hopefully recycle them, right? But all those circuit boards are only partially recyclable, right? There's still billions of gallons of toxic whatever that went into these things in order to create them. And as I'm talking about in my next book coming out later this year, all of this stuff is just designed to be used for a year.
Don't forget, a lot of cars are made of plastic these days.
Oh, a lot of it.
And a lot of those plastics are not recyclable.
Great point. Some are, and it took a while.
Some are not. So what do? End up shredding the plastic down, making plastic wood?
Yeah.
For your deck at home?
And at least, if you're going to use that's fine, right? But we have to scramble to figure out a use for all of these formerly perfect cars.
Here's the catch. And when you dig deeper and think about it, what metals go into a car? Copper, iron, steel,
aluminum.
Now, who needed those metals to make their EV batteries and their EV cars?
Whoa. So they're forcing the government to force people to give them
turn
those
in
metals?
Their cars so that Elon Musk could make his electric cars.
And everybody else for that matter.
Right.
Right, and it's an artificial push. As an economist, you know that there's...
Right. It's an artificial push on the marketplace.
As opposed to a natural demand.
And there is no natural demand. Now think about California again. California has, since I've been there once and drove the whole state, there's basically 4 different climates in California.
Oh, right.
You've got the desert down there in San Diego and LA. As you move further north to San Francisco, it's much like Rochester in New York State. It's very wet,
it can get some snow. You go to Sacramento, it gets really snowy up there.
Huh.
And what happens? What happens to the undercarriage of an EV car?
The ones around here are going to rust eventually.
Just like the ones in the desert sands of California, going to eat away at the battery in the undercarriage. Just like when you have to put road salt down in the winter.
Yeah, that's not going to be fun. And people don't wash their cars often like I do.
But even if you wash your car, that's what activates the salt and the sand to eat away at the undercarriage and the battery. That's why they blow up.
Whoa.
Just like a laptop battery if you leave it outside.
Oh, wow. Really? Does it bulge or explode?
It bulges. Yeah. And then if you leave it out in the sun on a sandy beach, just wait. It's only a matter of time before the laptop blows up.
That's interesting.
No different. So now all these people, you pushed them to get this $3,000 tax rebate for an EV, but the car is $60,000. You've artificially inflated the price with these rebate programs.
Because now the dealers are going to say, whatever, you're getting a rebate anyway. We can charge whatever we want.
Right. You're getting $9,500 from the state. You're getting $3,000 rebate on your federal taxes. What's it do? Raises the price artificially. Wow. Artificially goes up. And what are we finally waking up to now all this time later? Electric battery cars can't do what cars with gasoline can do. They can't go the distance. They can't push. They can't pull a trailer. The EV trucks are useless. You can't put the same amount of weight in them.
Yeah.
You know? All those companies that bought 18-wheelers that were electric, what a joke.
Yeah, and it's interesting how all that was promised to be out in 2021, right? And that's why I love reading these articles from 21, right? These 3-year-old articles, to show people this didn't come to pass.
It didn't come to pass. And you look at what's going on in New York State, that climate bill, it's falling apart. You can't do 90% of what's in it.
Wow. So it sounds good, but
it sounds good, but the technology is not there.
And before
we are not ready for it.
I'm going to finish the article now, but I want to say one thing about that is that they're pushing everyone to get heat pumps instead of furnaces, right?
Heat pumps are more expensive than heat pumps in the end are more expensive in the dead of winter than natural gas,
because they're working extra hard, and they're only meant for slightly cold climates. Is that right?
For instance, my parents have had a heat pump for 40 some years in that house.
Huh.
And in that house, their worst heating season in the worst winter cost them $7,000 to $8,000 on a heat pump because it goes to electric backup.
Wow. And by the way,
backup.
It's full of toxic chemicals. She won't mention that. If you truly care, I always say, look, I question any environmental stuff, and I say if you truly care about the environment, let's look deeper.
You'll question it.
Thank you. All right, so let's finish. Mm-hmm.
Natural gas is cheaper. National Grid came out just a couple of weeks ago saying the reason why your electric bill's going up because we got to change all the transformers on the poles and all the power stations to comply with numbnuts' climate change bill to accept solar and wind energy.
Oh, so
and they basically said it can't happen in the time frame that they want it to happen down here.
I am a fan of natural gas buses, right? In a situation where you're in a closed system and it's a couple large buses that don't go outside the city, whatever, so you don't have gas station problems. Natural gas makes a lot of sense there. All right, let's finish. Mm-hmm.
Two things though. Had we listened to Jimmy Carter in the 1970s, we'd be way further ahead on this topic.
How?
Because him and Jerry Brown were saying we need to be prepared for this day.
So you plant seeds instead of wanting instant results.
Right. They were trying to plant the seeds in the 70s when Jerry Brown was governor of California and Jimmy Carter was president. Because, they had some foresight. And on top of that, we could have been way ahead on the recycling bit, too. But, nope, nobody wanted to listen to them.
So now here we are needing a fast fix.
I don't think we need a fast fix, because if you look at any of the research on geology going on around the world, the African continent is starting to split.
Really?
The continent is starting to rise above New Zealand. Under New Zealand, there's a whole continent starting to rise.
Whoa.
You got volcanic activity all around the Pacific Rim.
Plate tectonics.
Yeah.
All right, let's finish up this article here. The commenter says it takes something of value and renders it valueless to the resale market. This is the broken window fallacy. The price of low-end used vehicles aside, so number one, it's broken window fallacy. It damages perfectly good things in a hopeless attempt to stimulate something. Then, the price of low-end used vehicles went up artificially for several years as a result of that first Cash for Clunkers program. So anyone looking to purchase a low-end used car found few options available. So let's say you're poor and you live in California. Now, you can't find repair parts for those Cash for Clunker cars back in 2008 because they destroyed all the cars. So you can't go to a junkyard and look for parts. And you gotta buy yourself another car and you can't find another one.
And you can't get credit.
And you can't get credit. Often the very young or poor were instead forced to spend much more money. So that makes the car companies happy, but it should make everyone else unhappy. Again, if you want to make a lot of money, that's great. But if you make your money by destroying products, which our industry loves doing, and my next book will expose that. All right,
and destroy people's lives in the process. Because
all to make fake jobs, artificial jobs.
Right.
When you could be doing something productive. So the other commenter says, yes, let's destroy running cars during a shortage. That won't raise prices higher, will it?
What's the first thing taken in a credit when people go into bankruptcy? First thing taken is the car.
All right, so we'll just make this an hour-long episode. All right, James, I got a few more articles for you. You ready?
Yep.
All right. I got a good news here. You want a good news?
Sure.
All right, so you probably know this, but when you have a Windows PC or a Mac, after a couple of years, the operating system eventually destroys itself, or they attack you and they say that that operating system is no longer supported in the hopes that you put the computer in the garbage, right? Just like we're talking about. Nice segue into this article here. So what we do, and you know this, and we've been doing this since the early 2000s, is we purify a computer by installing some form of Linux on there.
Correct.
So here's the deal, though. When we have a machine like that, with a Windows PC, it's much easier to purify it with Linux. With a Mac, it was very difficult until 2006, when Apple went more mainstream. They use Intel processors, so they're now mainstream computers capable of mainstream stuff. So any 2006 or newer Mac, you could install Linux on there. I currently am using a 2012 MacBook Pro running Mint on there as my main machine that we're talking on currently. And I'm very proud of it. Isn't that nuts? So here's the issue.
That's crazy.
So here's and actually I have a client who's got 3 of these spare, and I'm going to mint them and find good homes for them. So here's the problem. Around 2019, 2020, Apple decided to go a different route with their processors. So they're no longer using Intel processors. They're no longer using mainstream processors. They're using something called ARM. It's still a standard. It's just a different standard. All right, fine. So the volunteers who work on Linux software had to follow up with that. They had to study that technology and come up with a version of Linux that supported it. And most versions, I mean, there are versions of Linux out there that already do support ARM technology. They just had to get a couple of the details right on these particular Apple models. So they've done a lot of progress on this, right? So that, look, let's say you have a 2020 Apple laptop. You're going to use it the way it is for 5 years. And then let's say 2025, 2026 rolls around, right? Here we are. And Apple attacks and says you're no longer allowed to use this computer anymore because that magic word support. They dangle the word support. They tell you to put the computer in the garbage. And most people obey. However, I'm one of maybe 10 people in the world who say, wait a minute, we can take this perfectly good laptop, right? We unlock it from the Apple Death Grip. We turn off all the permanent locks. And we can liberate and purify the machine by ripping out the filthy Apple software and using that perfectly good, beautiful computer with something else. So we install Linux. So these folks, the volunteers who are working on Linux, studied these Apple models and they studied these Apple processors. And here we go. 9to5mac.com, 2021. Linux is now usable as a basic desktop on M1 Macs. In other words, this new generation of Mac. After almost a year of a project to port the Linux to the M1 Mac, Linux kernel is now available to Mac with Apple's proprietary processor. And now, the project is saying Linux is now usable in a basic way. PCIe bindings, print control drive, I2C driver, and device power management are still in review. They're still being worked on. On typical SoCs, and this is interesting, right? So let me explain SoC. Yep. In the 80s, you had a motherboard and it had all sorts of chips all over it, right? And one did the sound, one did the video, blah, blah, blah. Nowadays, the whole gosh darn computer is basically on one chip. It's called an entire system on a chip, SoC. So on typical SoCs, drivers have intimate knowledge of the underlying hardware and they hard code the precise layout. However, Apple is unique in putting emphasis on keeping hardware interfaces compatible across the generations of their chips. That's actually the only positive thing I've heard about Apple this decade. No kidding. So the UART hardware... Right. Yeah, the UART hardware in the M1 dates back to the original iPhone, because the iPhone was the first thing that used this Apple M1 chip. They called it the A1 chip back then. This means we are in a unique position to be able to try writing drivers that will not only work for the M1, but may work unchanged on future chips as well. This is a very exciting opportunity in this ARM64 world. And by the way, folks, if you think about it, they're saying, hey, if we master this technology, we'll be good for the future, but what about the past? There's a project where people are trying to get Linux to run on all of these billions of discarded iPhones and iPads out there. Again, after 5 years, Apple attacks you and says you're no longer allowed to use this product. So all this precious metals and toxic chemicals in these phones go in the garbage, right? So this project might enable us to install Linux and liberate these phones and tablets too. While there is no GPU acceleration yet, the M1's CPU are so powerful that a software-rendered desktop is actually faster. In other words, we haven't gotten the graphics drivers done yet. However, this chip is so powerful, it'll do it for us, right? It'll improvise for us. While there are certainly many rough edges, getting to this point allows development to be self-hosted. In other words, now that we've got it mostly working, we can do the work from inside one of these machines instead of working from outside of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So what do you think? Do you come across Apple machines and phones and stuff?
Oh my God, all the time. They get to a point and they just like, here you go, just wipe it and toss it out. Wipe it and toss it out. I'm like, what? This thing's still got life to it. What are you talking about?
Sorry, too bad.
Yeah, right. It's like, give me a break. I was doing that all the time. Throwing out good equipment. Like, oh.
And I mean, again, properly recycle when possible, but it's still horrible that they're discarding this stuff. Do you remember, I heard a lot of legends of this, and I'm sure you did too, big companies, right? Huge Rochester, huge companies back when Rochester had companies, and also huge government offices were just putting pallets of laptops in the garbage in the actual dumpster or next to a dumpster.
Yep.
It's insane. Yeah. But our governor cares about the environment, right?
That's the hypocrisy behind it. You got some agencies that won't even, recycle the stuff or send a toner cartridge back. But yeah, we're all about the environment. You're what? I'm like, I did this job for 12 years, and you're telling me you care about the environment and you won't even put the label on the box to mail it back?
They don't even put the sticker on the box to mail it to recycle it or hand it to a local dude. I have a buddy I met through Craigslist, and he comes to my office every quarter, doesn't charge me anything, and takes all my recyclables. Folks, it's not hard. If you actually care about the environment, instead of making laws, why don't you do something?
Right. I mean, it would be amazing that you could put Linux on these machines and extend the life of them. I mean, you got school districts out there with all these iPads and Google Chromebooks out there.
Yeah, and that's a whole separate ball game. I'm one of the few people on Earth.
And they're sitting in closets because nobody knows how to fix them.
Right, and the IT jokers have no clue because they were just taught that, just update.
Security, and affordability. They run on Google's Chrome OS, which is a lightweight operating system focused on web-based applications.
And speaking of...
Here's a breakdown of what's
stupid...
Oh, did your phone just attack?
Stupid products? Yes.
Your phone overheard our whole conversation and decided to attack with a helpful thing?
On Chromebooks, yep.
But yeah, you're totally right, James. How many billions of school districts or thousands of school districts have billions of laptops, iPads, Chromebooks that you and I can liberate, but few others can, right? Their IT jokers are basic dudes who know how to type fast and use a mouse. They don't understand this deep stuff.
No, they don't.
Or, when you work in an organization, what do? Whatever, not my problem.
I'd have people who worked in the buildings. Well, how do I get rid of this phone? I don't know how to wipe it. I'm like, well, first of all, don't give it back to Verizon until you wipe it.
Right.
Or T-Mobile. I'd wipe the phone for them, and then I said, here you go. Now you can give it back to them if you want to trade it in. And then most of the time, they wouldn't want to trade it in after I did that. They're like, can you recycle this for me? Oh, sure. I'll just throw it in the box. It'll go to our recycler, and they'll take it apart.
Perfect. Or as long as you sign out of the Apple death grip, you can erase it properly and give it to someone in Africa. I just gave a pastor a bag of probably 10, 12 cell phones, and he's going to bring it to Africa, and people are going to be appreciative.
One of those add-on services you do.
Yeah.
Make happy people.
Oh, absolutely. I had someone yesterday or 2 days ago, and they had a broken TV, and they said, well, I haven't gotten around to bringing it to the public recycling. I said, don't worry about it, I'll deal with it for you, and they were thrilled. So
it makes happy people if you can make their life a little bit easier.
Absolutely. And again, it's these little nuggets of wisdom that we're starting to teach people, right? Is you can It's a little nugget of wisdom that all of a sudden unleashes a huge flood of good things in the world, right? Hey, all of a sudden people have phones instead of this toxic stuff going in the dump. Hello, it couldn't be a better win-win.
I mean, I still have my HP recycling account.
Oh, neat, yeah.
And my Sharp account for printers. I'm still sending them stuff back.
Neat.
It all goes to Kentucky.
That's cool. Huh.
Goes to one facility in Kentucky, and what it does is when you recycle it and send it back in their box, they get credit for the company.
Tax credit.
Yeah, as being a quote unquote green sustainable company. That's the whole reason why they give you the free shipping label.
Whoa. And hold on a second, James, just like you were talking about earlier with the Cash for Clunkers thing, so now these companies figure, hey, we'll make a product last a year because the government is going to fund us to recycle it after a year?
Yep.
What? This I didn't know. Wow. Wow.
However,
Wow.
like, okay, CRT TVs, for instance, CRT monitors, we had to pay like 35 cents a pound way back when I first started. But the company was on the hook for the rest of it because there were so many chemicals in it.
And by the way, folks, another huge waste, because now they're collector's items. I hoard these old TVs. Instead of destroying them, they're now worth a ton.
But the company was on the hook for paying to get rid of them.
Yeah. And then there were all these surcharges.
Right. But they had to take it from you for free. But the company was on the hook to pay the disposal fee and all of that.
Wow. All right. We got 7 minutes and 3 more articles. You ready?
I could go on all day about the recycling of garbage.
That's incredible.
In IT.
That's incredible. What a waste. The whole industry's a waste.
Oh, it is. And I think the right to repair movement is starting to turn some of this around.
Finally.
We hope.
All right, so here's one that's crazy. Here's another segue one. This is from techeris.com, 2021, October. We're getting there. Canon faces a $5 million lawsuit over printers that stop scanning when their ink is low.
Oh, I love that one.
Isn't that insane? Printers can be frustrating devices, but sometimes the frustrations are brought on by the printer maker themselves. All of the time, it should say.
Yes!
A New York man, not me, but I really should start suing HP for every possible activity they've ever done. A New York man is now suing Canon for disabling the scanning feature on its all-in-one printers when they're out of ink. While this is perfectly reasonable to stop a printer from printing if the ink is gone, well, although even that, they're trying to attack when your ink is low, and they're preventing you from printing even though you still have a few drops left. But scanning is another issue. The plaintiff would not have purchased the device or would not have paid as much for it had he known that he would have had to maintain the ink just to scan documents. Absolute lunacy!
Total lunacy.
Right? Anything else before we go on?
Hey, we got rid of all the Canon printers because of that problem.
And Canon used to be my number 2 favorite, and then they fell to pieces a couple years ago, and they're starting to exhibit the same behaviors that HP does, where they just randomly just destroy themselves.
Yep.
All right, so another one here. TheHackerNews.com, 2021, October. Apple Pay can be abused to make contactless payments from a locked iPhone. Cybersecurity researchers have disclosed an unpatched flaw in the Apple Pay, and that's where you put a credit card into your iPhone, that attackers could use to abuse to make an unauthorized Visa payment with a locked iPhone by taking advantage of the express travel mode. An attacker only needs a stolen powered-on phone. The transaction could also be relayed from your phone while it's in your bag or your purse without your knowledge. Right? Because, again, in my professional opinion, wireless is evil, right? They were so bent on making a product that you could magically wave in front of the cash register that now someone can walk up to your purse and magically wave a computer in front of it and steal your payments.
Yep.
Now, this is really interesting, right? Because normally the industry scrambles and they come out with update attacks and they say, a bad guy could get into your computer under these astronomically unlikely circumstances. But here's where the industry actually kept cool heads. They said, this is a concern with a Visa system, but even Visa does not believe this kind of fraud is likely to take place in the real world given the multiple layers of security that are already in place. So I applaud Visa for not scrambling like an idiot like everyone else in this industry does, and scrambling and panicking and scrambling, because as you know, what happens when you do something in haste?
Here's the problem. Everybody ran into, quote, contactless payment during
Right, the
pandemic.
wireless wave a phone, right? Contactless, without any physical contact.
What is contactless? There is no contactless anything, okay? First of all, and it's another way for you to lose all your money.
Yeah, it's a beautiful way. Again, I say this all the time, where some dumb feature that no one ever needed now opens up a Pandora's box of horrors.
And what are the bank? Think about what the banks are doing right now. Visa bought Chime.
Oh, they're buying all the startups?
Bank of America is buying, I think, either PayPal
What?
or one of the others. And yeah, they're all getting into this PayPal, Venmo.
This instant
Venmo,
stuff.
I think, is being bought by Chase.
That's crazy. So now all of a sudden you're beholden to them, and as you know, every company in this industry wants to be a monopoly. I'm looking out for that. Oh, that's crazy. I mean, I was actually hoping that those new startups would disrupt the industry, but these guys have so much money, and those startups are so hungry to just sell out and retire, right? And that's why I applaud Tom Golisano, by the way. Every time someone tried to buy him out, he said, no thanks, and he kept going until he got big, right? I wish these companies would grow themselves so that, I mean, look at all the times that Apple could have been gobbled, and they just said, no, we're going to keep going.
But I have to applaud the banks here, because by buying these peer-to-peer payment apps, that gives you protection. Because otherwise, Venmo, Chime, PayPal, you have no protection under the FDIC.
All right, that's a huge point. And also, the banks are acting in their own interest. Of course, just like Microsoft and all of them, they're going to buy any kind of little startup before they become disruptive.
But yeah, otherwise, if these banks don't buy them, the banks go away.
Right.
And you also have to ask yourself, why is it that if everything is going to be contactless, and everything is going online, why are banks still building all these branches?
Well, in the case of Bank of America, they're anti-building branches. They're getting rid of branches, and in the few branches they've left, they have no employees. And there's one lady who takes an old person by the neck and shoves their face into an ATM and tells them, "You got to figure this out." I watched it happen. It was nuts.
But around here, I mean, Trusco is building branches like you can't believe.
Weird.
Broadview is building branches like they're going out of style. It's like, wait a minute here. Why are you guys doing the opposite of everybody else?
I applaud them for it. I'm with a local credit union that has phenomenal customer service. The only thing I can think of, right, in New York, everything we do in New York is always, all right, what's the sinister ulterior motive? So
exactly.
Maybe they're getting tax credits for building these branches, right?
And I think that somebody finally is starting to understand that not everybody is going to do that online. Because, as I explained to people with IT, there will come a time when you will no longer be able to do this online.
Why?
Because of age, disability, sight issues.
And you need, right? You need a real
problems.
human at a branch.
Right.
All right. Last quick article here. This is more of a recommendation. Our buddy Ryan sent me this video by a YouTuber named Aaron Clarey. And he's AARONCLAREY. And it says, "Why are corporations even in business?" And what he means is, every day these companies, especially HP, I love that he calls out HP on their garbage, is he's saying these companies make garbage, they design it to die, they make it as shoddy as possible, they make it unusable, and he said he tried for hours, he's a computer guy, and he tried for hours to set up an HP printer and couldn't, and he said, when you had an Atari, you plugged it in and it worked. He said, I threw away my HP, I went and bought a Brother, I plugged it in and it worked, right? So he's reflecting the same stuff I'm saying. I'm so thrilled. He's got a lot more subscribers than me, so I'm so thrilled that he's out there saying this. It's definitely a not safe for work video. There's plenty of profanity and offensive material in there. But his point is absolutely spot on. It's the anti-improvement of everything. And he even talks about the future of all this stuff when AI ruins all our jobs and what happens. Basically, we're just going to be left with a brand, right? It's a brand that used to be meant for something, used to stand for something, and now it's just a brand, and you got a bunch of these offshore project workers who work for 10 weeks and then they're done, that kind of keep slapping duct tape on the products. But he does offer a possible solution. He says, look, cottage industries are going to survive. He said most people are going to walk out of these corporate jobs, they're going to do a cottage industry. Yep. By the way, folks, you can go to becomeanexorcist.com to learn how to become a computer exorcist, right? So to protect people from this stuff. Being a computer exorcist is a job that ain't going to go away. It's not going to be destroyed by AI because you go to people's homes just like a bank branch, real human service, and you protect people from technology.
He has my sympathy on HP printers. I would also like to add Lexmark printers to that problem.
Oh, Lexmark printers were around for the home printers. None of them worked. Only 8 of their printers functioned. All the rest of them, when I walked into someone's house, hey, Mark, I bought this Lexmark printer. Can you recycle it for me? Totally non-functional.
Yep. But corporations lost their way starting in the 1980s when everybody was going to get rich by offshoring production to China and then later on in the early 90s to India. And everybody got rich offshoring by cutting costs. And that's when the built-in obsolescence started.
So that's when the anti-improvement or the gutting or the ruining of that's when they ruined everything.
Right. And that's when Wall Street started to look at short-term gains instead of long-term gains.
Oh, wow.
Because back in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, you could go into corporate America, build a great product in America, and have a stable long-term job for decades.
Right, because they were all about the long term, the long view.
My uncle had one with Xerox and Grumman. Mm-hmm. My uncle had one for Xerox. Another one worked for the banking. An aunt worked for the banking sector for a long time. But then it became all this offshoring for a long time. We can outsource the menial stuff like the manufacturing and make more money on the product, raise the cost of the product while it only costs us nickels and dimes to make it over here somewhere else.
And to be fair, like I have a buddy in Pakistan and I hired him to do a project and he did it for like 1%. I mean, it was crazy, like 1% of the cost that it would cost me here. And I like him and I like supporting folks like that. Absolutely. But if you do it in a way, a broad brush view, where it's a cynical thing, where you just throw everything out there with no training.
But the problem is Americans have gotten more cynical. They think they're going to fix the problem by bringing everything back. The supply chains are too complicated now.
Oh, wow. Well, and again, complication is the enemy.
Complication is the enemy, right? Supply chains are not going to shift in 6 months. Because the 14,000-mile supply chain is what we created.
Oh, I like that. I mean,
look at the auto industry. Some parts are made in Canada, some parts are made in Mexico.
It's a scattered supply chain too.
Right. The steel is put together in parts of Mexico and Canada, and then the car is basically assembled in America.
You can't even say made in USA anymore. It's just, final point of assembly for all of this soup is here.
Bingo. Basically, the same thing goes for the laptop or the iPhone for Apple. It's basically assembled here. All the rest of it's done over there.
And I knew this. Look, James, I knew this 10 years ago before all the COVID, the COVID computer shortages with all the chips in the cars and stuff. 10 years ago, I said, wait a minute, you know what? These are American cars, and that's great, but all of the electronics from them are coming from China.
Somewhere else, yeah.
Or somewhere else, right? And all the programming is mostly done by people somewhere else. Again, they're good people, of course, but they're They're anti-empowered, they have no training, and they're only sitting there for 10 weeks.
Take this guy's point about HP. Where do you think HP and Xerox are making the most money right now?
On the ink and the toner.
Bingo.
Right, but all right, that's the thing. If you're making your money on your ink and your toner, then why are you making printers that die after a week or a year?
And then on the back end, when you recycle that ink and that toner, is where they're making more money.
Because of the tax credit?
No, not because of just the tax credit. Because there's always just enough left in the cartridge that they can extract to make new ink.
So that's why they shut down the printer even if you have 5 or 10%?
Yes!
Are they harvesting the toner?
Yes!
Really?
Go
Look this up.
to the website closetheloop.com.
Really?
It's a company in Kentucky that recycles toner.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Down with the man. Yeah.
They will show you the process that they go through. Wow. And you'll see that all these cartridges, all this toner is drained out. And they'll show you what the process looks like.
Look at this. Doing. We refurbish more than 700,000 consumer electronic devices every year. This is amazing. This is what I do in a very tiny way. There's a picture of my computer on there. But and they're working with HP and Microsoft and so on.
Yeah, look at the toner process.
This is awesome.
E-Waste Plus and Victor.
Yeah.
Just takes the stuff apart.
Yeah, and they're cool. I know them. Yeah.
Oh, I love them.
Yeah.
I've worked with them for years. But Close the Loop does mostly ink.
Wow. But also apparently some consumer devices. Yeah, how cool.
Yeah. Look at the process for the ink and how those cartridges go through this whole cleaning process, and then they're refilled again.
Good.
And then they're sold.
Are they sold as genuine HP brand or genuine whatever brand, or are they sold as third party?
I think there's some of them are sold third party.
Good.
They have to. Yeah.
Wow, but they are a renew partner for HP, so they can't do too many things to thwart HP. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's that'll put a lot of this in perspective, and that's where.
Wow.
I mean, the Lexmark toner, they take the toner back, and they'll refill their own toner cartridges if they're not broken. They'll make pens out of them.
Neat.
CloseTheLoop.com. They also, on their website, they have a thing where they show that they're making blacktop with some of the ink.
Good, right. If we need to make all this stuff anyway, I heard of a company that was recycling materials to make railroad ties, right? If you're going to have all this plastic in the world, you got to do something with it instead of using new plastic to do that. Wow. All right, James Coffin, thank you so much for being on the Computer Exorcist podcast. BecomeAnExorcist.com if you want to learn how to become a computer exorcist and put a stop to this craziness.
Madness. It's all madness.
All of it. Maybe that'll be the title of the episode. Thank you so much. I so appreciate your insight, and we will talk to you soon.
Talk to you again, Mark.